Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome Henry to the Analytic Mind podcast. Keen to jump into this and get your feel on what's going on out there in the with AI at the moment. I mean, so much is changing so fast. I am continually blown away. So as our resident expert in this field, it's really excited to get you on today and to chat a bit more about it.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. I was actually on the podcast about a year ago, and less than a year ago, actually. So many things have changed that I'm pretty sure most of what I said before has kind of totally been enveloped by AI and a lot of other things as well, right? So it's a fairly exciting time to be part of this world, especially because so many things are changing.
Yeah, now this I agree. Like this change is exciting, but I'm sure that it is challenging and yeah, scaring some people too. Like I just think so much changed so fast. I mean, personally, I don't think I've ever seen things change this fast. It can be quite daunting.
Yeah, no, definitely. I like the way that you put it in your video that you posted on YouTube, where it's all about like one benefit that this will provide is democratizing the actual functionalities that people just didn't have before. You
Mm,
mentioned a lot of times now where you kind of need to get into a particular topic, you need to be an expert at it before you kind of start doing things in that topic. If it's
mm,
Python, SQL, Power BI, whatever. Now that you
mm.
have this little AI assistant with you, you can kind of do anything you want as long as you know the few basics. So it's just giving everyone that accessibility and power, which is really good to see.
Yeah, no, you know what? I was doing some research on the weekend. I was basically just chatting with ChatGPT, and I
Yeah,
was like, "There's got to be a new name for an individual who can leverage AI to do all of these things that you can do now." Like I just don't feel there is a bucket for data analysts, data scientists, app developers, workflow automation. Individuals. Like to me, anyone can do all of these tools now. Like it's just and use all the tools, use all the have all the skills pretty quickly. Like I just don't feel like you
yeah,
need to be boxed in. And I was trying to come up with a new name for this, and I think the name I came up with was sort of an omni data expert or something,
yeah.
something like that. Omni data and AI expert. And I look, I think it's a thing. Like I definitely think it is something that is happening faster than we know. You know.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's funny. Omni data and AI expert. It's funny because these types of terms, like previously it was, you're a citizen developer or a citizen builder.
Yeah.
You're able to use automation and no code tools to your advantage.
Yeah.
But now, like with ChatGPT and all these LLMs, it's really opened up it to so much more. And I even feel like, an omni data and AI person's still pretty narrow because these sorts
Mm,
of technologies can apply in much more cases than just those two.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure at some point we will see a difference between people who use LLMs in their workplace to their advantage and people who don't. And we'll
Mm,
see the people who do use them effectively, similar to how we've been seeing people who use like no code tools and automation tools to their advantage, kind of
mm,
rise up and be differentiated in that way. So
yeah.
that's my personal opinion, but I think AI will definitely be another um, tool in people's toolkit to kind of improve their productivity along with no code tools and automation tools.
Yeah. One of the things that's just has blown my mind as I've dived into it deeply in the last. I would say I saw AI, like I used ChatGPT like a few months when it first came out, like 4 months ago, or was it 4 or 5
Yeah,
months ago? It's only really been in the last 2 months or so that I've like heavily used it, heavily tried to get it to assist me in doing various different data tasks like Python and R and SQL. And it's like it's just mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing. I can use all these tools that I never used before, and it's not perfect. It takes time to get used to it, but I can just learn them probably 10 times faster than what it would have
yeah,
taken to learn if I hadn't got this AI assistant. So it's it's blown my mind in terms of what's possible, and that's also, I think, is shaping my viewpoint on the direction I think that enterprise DNA needs to go. I think we need to empower and um, give excite everyone about what they can do across all these new things. I just think there's just so much more you can do. So why not empower it wherever we can?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, part of what I like about enterprise DNA is that it's not being fearful for what's to come, but embracing what's to come. Because it's
Mm,
one of those things where, in 50 years for sure, the game will change so much that no one's going to be writing, not even 50 years, actually, in 4 years, no one's going to be writing Power BI DAX queries anymore.
yeah.
It's much more about embracing the technology that's coming and adapting. Some of those things where the only constant is change, right?
Mm,
But I did want to get a take. I did want to get your take on how Microsoft is handling it. So their vision is to kind of embed LLMs and through Copilot and all the different applications.
mm,
I'm aware that Enterprise DNA has something very not similar in the sense that, but it's very good at providing you questions that you can test your knowledge with and things like that. So you have your own
yeah.
little Copilot sidekick that helps you learn in Enterprise DNA as well.
Yeah.
What do you think about that and how Microsoft is doing it?
I've been thinking super deeply about this lately because obviously, we've got a massive incentive to do so. We've historically been very aligned to Power BI and Microsoft and the suite, and they recently announced Microsoft Fabric or Data Fabric.
Yeah,
It's thrown up more questions than answers to me. It truly has. I'm very conflicted as to what is going on, why they have chosen to do this.
yeah,
Uh, and I even have some probably quite controversial theories around it, but it's hard for me to really go out there and say them um, because of how much we've promoted Power BI in the past. So we've got this historical lean towards Power BI, but since this is a safe space, since the Analytic Mind is a safe space, we can talk through a few of these, and I'm keen to get your take as well because I mean you're
yeah,
heavily invested in it too. I feel, my biggest feeling is mm, there is just such a big change in how and it is coming faster than we know, and how you actually analyze data. I just think it is fundamentally changing. And everyone, including Microsoft, is racing to position themselves to adjust, to manage this change. And I think that the way you create, my feeling is that the way you create Power BI reports is just fundamentally going to change. I just do not think that in the future, having to go through all the steps that we have gone through to build Power BI reports, modeling, query editor, DAX formulas, I just do not think that that is the future. The
yeah,
future is code interpreter. The future is LLMs going and just doing all the analysis for you, and Microsoft's Copilot. And so my controversial theory on this fabric is that Microsoft, like they see this coming, and they've had to they're rebranding. They're having to rebrand because they've got this huge franchise with Power BI,
yeah,
massive amounts of subscriptions, probably makes them probably worth billions of dollars, just Power BI alone. Um, and they're seeing this change coming down the pipe, and they're having to reposition. They're having to reposition it within another suite to justify, and eventually they'll say, okay, well, there's no Power BI subscription, there's a Fabric subscription, and they are having to do all this now to get ahead of that. So that's my real controversial theory. Um, what do you think? What do you think? I think there's a few other things, but that's my one thing that I think probably has happened here.
yeah. I I think Microsoft is scared. I think there's a lot of, or there might be some cannibalizations that is going on in their business, especially with the
Mm,
tools that are coming out.
mm,
I think right now they 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 shouldn't be on the fence about these things, which is why they're coming out with these new tools and they're trying to embed these LLMs all over their platform to kind of make them the premium tool. As for, you know, I think LLMs will get there one day where you can just tell it like, hey, create a visualization that does X and Y for me and do it in this way. I think that personally is probably still a few years out, so I don't think they need to worry too much about it. And I think Fabric is, in my opinion, an origination of just the way things are going, where before, you know, things where you would buy something once, you would buy a subscription to it, or like a one-time license to it rather. It would be hosted on your computer or on your server. And that happened a lot with visualization tools to begin with, and then a lot of no-code automation tools and so on and so forth. However, with things like data, apart from the actual pipelining, it still hasn't gone there yet, which is, I think, what Fabric aims to do. It aims to put that entire thing as a software as a service. So I think you're right that they're probably thinking like, okay, in a few years, LLMs will kind of take over a lot of their use cases. And I'm not sure if Fabric was the origination of that. It was probably the origination of just everything becoming software as a service. But anyways, I still think they have a pretty good strategy, like just to embed AI and LLMs in everything that they do, including from Outlook all the way to more advanced tools like Power BI, right? And I honestly think that everyone needs to follow Microsoft's footsteps and do the same things with their workflow, right? But I know Enterprise DNA is doing that with the education courses that they provide.
Yeah.
Where AI is embedded now in every single fabric of what we kind of teach. People need to do that with their own workflows, with their own day-to-day activities. How can you use LLMs to make that better, faster? How can you use your own version of the Copilot to basically do those things and become more efficient? And it's actually really great because I think right now it's not a problem of can the LLM do it. It's more of a problem of, is this something for the LLM to do? It's more of an imagination type exercise for people. A lot of people don't know, for example, that they can go into Excel, and if they need to kind of figure out how to split two columns apart and they need to think of a formula to do it, a lot of people don't know that they can go to LLMs and kind of ask that, right? So it's much more, in my opinion, an act of just thinking about what can LLMs do and an education around that, rather than, it's very easy, you know, to work with what you want. You just have to know what to ask for it, right? So yeah.
No, all really good points, and I'll add a few more to that. So yeah, there's so much swirling around in my mind. It's actually hard to get all my points across in a coherent order. But I watched few other points that just stick out to me like crazy from this Builds conference and what Microsoft is doing.
Yeah,
I watched a 1 hour session, and it was called The Future of Analytics. This was a session, and it had all of the individuals who used to just come out and talk about Power BI. You know, all these people at Microsoft were now talking about Fabric. Okay, so Power BI within this future of analytics discussion, which had all of the head people in the analytics space in Microsoft, Power BI was mentioned for probably about 15 to 20% of the time that we were in this session, right? Power BI desktop was not mentioned once. It was never showcased once. And you know, to me, that is the clearest sign ever that something is really up here, right? Like something is truly changing. And they're just slowly, you know, they're not saying it out loud, but they're slowly making it obvious that these things are that something is going on. It's so odd if you think about it. It's so odd that they would wrap such a successful product into a whole brand new product with 5 other things that probably less than 5% or less than 2% of the people who use Power BI actually use. Like, you got to think that is super weird, right? Why are they doing that? Why wouldn't they just build this stuff into Power BI? It's already a super successful product. It has brought so many more people into the analytics field than has ever been before. You know, really democratized a lot of things. And now they're wrapping it in with Data Factory and Azure Synapse and all these like in these other tools that just scare the hell out of everyone. Like it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre in my mind that they would do that. Other than something is going on, and they realize that you know fundamentally the way analytics is, you get your data, you get your analysis is changing, which is what I think is the case. That's why they've done it. Like what I think is going to happen here is they realize that LLMs is just a brand new way to compute. It's a brand new way to analyze, and you can just set them on a whole lot of raw data, right? And then they can just come up with the insights automatically in probably any format that you want. So
Yeah.
where does Power BI, if Power BI, what's important in that scenario? Well, what's important is you've got to hold all the data in these data lakes, right? You've got to have the platform where all of the data gets pumped into, so that then you can set your LLMs on it. And so they're competing now with Snowflake and this Databricks and AWS, etc., Google Cloud. They've always competed with them, but I think it's just going to become more important, right? Like the analytics of the future is just going to be setting these LLMs across your data. It's not this high frictional process of building a model and using the query editor and writing DAX and stuff. Like I just think that they see that is probably the old way of analytics, right? And they don't want to get caught out. And so that's why they're trying to push this data lake, and it's all about getting all your data into this Microsoft universe, so that they can eventually set the LLMs off across everything. So look, it's a bit controversial. My thoughts on that, and but I can be, because I'm not an MVP. I'm not actually tied to Microsoft at all. I'm not just going to be shouting what they want me to shout. But that's what I think's happening.
Yeah, I think with Fabric, definitely the true revolution is the one lake that kind of spans across of it. The fact that you can have any sort of tables represented by, I think, Delta Parquets is pretty cool. If you have all your tables, all your files, no matter where they are in any cloud system or local system, represented by virtual Delta Lake Parquet tables, that just means companies can have truly a single source of truth database. And then, like you said, maybe that's what matters more now in this LLM world, rather than being a greater visualization, being able to make sure that you have all your data in one place that the LLM of the future can then access and kind of create those insights from.
Yeah. But you know what? Like, how many people actually care about that in the Power BI universe? It's like 1%. Like, no one even cares about this stuff. It's just do you really think getting someone excited, like you're going to get someone excited about analytics if you're talking about some like Parquet, file type? Like, that's crazy to me. It's just so crazy that's how they would market it. But yeah, look, it probably is amazing. But why you would divert your attention from the amazing things that Power BI can do to go and talk about that is super weird. It's kind of weird from a marketing point of view. Like, I think, like where's the, I just think that fundamentally, the way we analyze data is changing just so faster than we know. It's changed. Like, these LLMs is just a brand new compute. It's a brand new way to compute anything. It's a brand new way to write, but it's a brand new way to just like look at data and analyze data. A low friction way. And Microsoft have all of these commercial responsibilities, right? And I think they're just trying to morph what works into something that they think will hopefully work in the future. My worry is that I don't actually think it's as a bigger competitive advantage as they had with Power BI. I just don't think it is. Like, if an LLM can just work over data set in a one lake, I'm sure it could work across like any data setting anywhere. Like, why does it need to be sitting in some one system where you're locked into a vendor? Like, why can't it just look across AWS, Google, Excel? Like, there's agents. You can build these agents now that just go and do anything for you. So I just don't see that as a huge differentiating factor that is going to really create such a massive competitive advantage like I think Power BI did. Like, the reason Power BI was so successful is because the analytical engine the analytical engine and the visualization engine were so superior to what else was out there. Right.
Right.
That is what underpinned Power BI, and Also, I think they marketed it very well. They use the community very well. But I think as things fundamentally change, that just won't be as big an advantage as it once was.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's especially with if you think about that all of the other competitors, have their own sort of software that does kind of what OneLake is doing. It is interesting to see why they would do something like this. I mean, personally, like just if you're like looking at companies and businesses, it's very hard for them to migrate anything. For them to migrate your entire data cycle from like what happens at engineering to data science all the way to visualization, that is going to be a very tough order for people to kind of fill in with Fabric. You kind of really need to be bought into the entire system to kind of do all that. You did mention LLM agents. How have you used agents to kind of like, I guess, surpass what LLMs can do?
I haven't used any myself. I've just watched videos on videos and read about them. It's a very emerging field, so I wouldn't say I'm an expert at all. I can just see the potential is that you can get LLMs to do one thing and then get them to do another thing, and get them to do another thing, and get them to do another thing, and you can do it. There's this concept of this LangChain framework, Auto GPT. Baby AGI, I think I saw was one, and they're just things that can stack doing one thing on top of another and do it automatically, kind of like Power Automate, but just in natural language. You can just ask it to do it, and it will go and do it, and it will run logic. It can run logic for you at every turn. It can. So, for example, I can see this happening. I can see you have your data somewhere, and you say, okay, I want to find all the best analysis on this data. It goes and searches the data, evaluates it, works out what the best analysis is, goes and runs all that analysis for you, and then puts it into a notebook or puts it into a dashboard in a best practice way. Then it comes back to you with summaries of each different chart. All of this can just happen automatically. Like, I've already seen examples of this already happening, and you can just see how people are going to develop things that just build one thing on top of the other, right? And so, that's just so superior to the friction-based analysis that we run in Excel, or we run in Tableau, or that we run in Power BI, or that even writing a Python BI notebook. Like, it is just so superior to all of that, right? And to me, that's what's coming down the pipe. I mean, it's not here in its fullest form just yet, but I've seen pieces of everything to know that that's where it's going.
Yeah, personally, that's what I'm most excited about. So, I've used ChatGPT obviously as many other people, but one thing I'm most excited about is when you combine LLM with another technology or another piece of work. So, for example, combining LLM with LangChain, or the ability to search through text. Just those two pieces of combination allows you to create a chatbot for any single document or documents that you can provide. So, for example, you can create a chatbot that basically knows all of Harry Potter, and you can ask it any sort of Harry Potter questions by just doing those two pieces of technology.
Yeah.
So, and then you also mentioned a particular other one, but I think that many companies and startups will pair LLMs with 2 or 3 other technologies to kind of really revolutionize how we do certain things, whether it's trying to search for answers in a document by just combining 2 simple tools like LangChain or Face with LLMs, or something completely different, which is maybe what you're suggesting, by combining LLMs with some sort of logical reasoning or sort of like visualization software, visualization agent together to kind of create those graphs. I mean, I think there's also going to be a lot of investment in this area as well. This is probably very similar to like when applications came out for phones. Like when the iPhone came out, there was a whole app store that came out. Now a lot of businesses are being built just on applications. Similar to this, there'll be a lot of businesses that will be built on just combining LLMs with other things.
Yeah,
and it's a trend to stay for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Like I've seen enough examples now to kind of get a feel for where I think things are going. Obviously, I don't know exactly, but if you just think about what a person who is analyzing with Python, data with Python, or someone who's analyzing with SQL, right? They're just typing out code, and then the next step is they get a summary of the data. Then the next step is they get a chart, and then they analyze it, right? It's just one step after the next.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's even the same with Excel data, right? Like, you have an Excel file, you put in a formula, then you put it into a chart, you put it into PowerPoint. You already, with just ChatGPT, can do all of those steps just one by one, right? Like, you type it in, you get some code, you get a formula, then you pop that into some notebook or into a spreadsheet or into a report, and then you get a calculation, and then you create a chart. And you just do that one after the next. Like, you can already do this. You can already do this without having to write any code. There is nothing stopping these agents or these AIs from just doing that step one after the other automatically for you without you having to touch a thing.
Yeah.
I think that's what Code Interpreter, this ChatGPT plugin, is basically doing. It basically can take all the data that you put into it, and then one by one, it will just go through all of these different SQL queries in the background. Just won't show you the queries. It will just show you the output, and then it can summarize it with text. It can actually run the logic. You got to. It's super exciting. Like, this isn't to me. This is not. Yes, it's a change from what's gone in the past, but just think about how much more you can do and how many more people can work with data. I mean, it's literally 20 times as statement. Like, 20 times the amount of people will be able to work with data. So that is just super exciting. And one of the other things that I think is, I've actually seen this within just ChatGPT, is that you can actually, within ChatGPT's logic, create a model of your data without having to build any of the relationships, without having to build any of the model per se that we build inside of Power BI right now, or that you have to build in all the BI tools. The LLMs can just look through different data sets and find the relationships naturally, and then go and do the calculations for you, or go and run the SQL code for you in the background. Right. And so all of this modeling, and this is again why I think this fabric in this one lake, and it's all about the data. It's all about just having the data in your systems is where the differentiation is. It's not in the calculation logic, the compute logic, the analytical engine you build. It's actually just holding the data. So that's a big change. That is a really big change. I'm really bringing forward all my controversial ideas. What do you think? Do you think that any of these are a bit too far out there, or they're all pretty legit?
No, I think they're all. I think they're all pretty legit. I think right now, I do need to use Code Interpreter more before I make a statement on this. But I have, I've been like following OpenAI for a while and GPT models for a while. That's something that they generally struggle with is math and logical reasoning and things like that, because they're a probabilistic model, right? That's why you have to pair them with other sort of tools to kind of make them worth it. So I need to look at to see if it can do those types of things. And I have seen some examples, and it's kind of blown my mind. And I think it'll just keep. The point is, I think it'll just keep getting better at it. And there'll be more revolutions that come over the next year. So I have no doubt that what you're saying is true. It might not be 6 months out, it might be a year out, might be 2-3 years out. But definitely, I think there are limitations. I think one of the biggest limitations that GPT faces right now is really the number of tokens that it can handle at once. So right now, the standard GPT model has 4K tokens. You can only put in 4,000 data points per word, or obviously it's there's a range there. So it's sometimes limited to what it can do. But imagine if it had and they're working towards this, and I'm sure we'll get there one day, 1 million tokens. Think about how much processing that it can do. Sometimes the LLMs don't work because they don't have enough data, and you kind of need to chunk it apart. That's what LangChain and really a lot of those search engines do. But if you don't have the limitations, then I can definitely see this kind of blowing up. So
Mm.
I think that's one big limitation currently. 4K, 8K, 32K tokens. I think 32K is the biggest I've seen. I think
Yeah.
Anthropic has a model that does 100K tokens, but it
Yeah.
doesn't perform as well as GPT. I think as soon as we get to start to see more of those, that's when it'll kind of really, really take off. But yeah, no, I don't think. I think those opinions are not so controversial, especially given what we've seen. I think a lot of people, and it's funny because I like ChatGPT was the biggest thing, and now it is kind of settling down, and there will be a point where it settles down until like the next big revolution.
Mm.
But I think one day we will get there. I think we'll get to that kind of world that you're thinking about.
Yeah, I just want to caveat a lot of my thoughts is that ChatGPT is not always right. It is. It
Yeah.
is. I have absolutely got answers which are just incorrect, and it says it very confidently that it thinks it knows that it thinks that it's right. So absolutely, it's not perfect. But I always look at that, and I said this on a recent course that I recorded around using ChatGPT for Power BI. Like, I mean, you can search through Google and search through forums and go onto blogs, and there's tons of terrible information out there. So it's not the end of the world. Like you've
Yeah.
always got to have some sort of critical thinking around what you're doing. You can't just utilize something without thinking. So that doesn't change a thing in my view. The other thing is that not a lot of these things are alive just yet. I'm just sort of reading the tea leaves here. But things are moving faster than anyone can really get a handle of, and so it's really just trying to get out ahead and trying to inform the listener, everyone who's listening. This is what we think is actually happening. Like it's a fundamental shift, and I think everyone's got to kind of get ready for it, right? Like you don't want to be caught out when there's a way better way of doing things.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. So, let's talk about that a little bit. What do you think are some of like the ethical implications or limitations of this type of technology? One you did mention where you kind of have to take everything that you get out of it with a grain of salt. You can't just rely
Mm,
on it. You need to see if it has any biases with what it's saying. There's sometimes hallucinations. There's things like that. There's different ethical dilemmas.
mm.
What do you think are some of the other kind of implications? I mean, I know two big ones that like come to mind are the one we already kind of mentioned and talk about, but the other big one is um, this technology has the capability of displacing a lot of jobs and displacing a
Mm,
lot of
mm.
people, and thinking about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
There is the argument where when ATMs came to an existence, bank tellers were totally against it, but then they didn't realize that ATMs allowed them to work on more high level tasks and more critical thinking tasks. So I personally think that that's what's going to happen here. But good to
Yeah.
get your take on it too.
I'm definitely not someone who thinks that technology is going to take jobs away. I never have been.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean,
in
like for
this in
example, just the writer's strike. That's that's the big news that's happening, right? One of the key points is using LLMs to kind of or help them with their jobs or do their jobs. So it's interesting.
well,
It is real. Like not that
just,
technology will take jobs, but people think that technology will take jobs. So yeah,
my yeah, I was gonna just adding to my thoughts on that. If you but in my thing here is if you do not embrace these AIs and these bots, I think you're in trouble. I truly
yeah,
do. You know, you are just going to be surpassed so quickly by everyone else who does. That yes, I think your job probably is at risk, right? But I think that's kind of similar to most technology. This is just happening way faster, right? Like if you if
yeah,
you if you refuse to use a computer, back in like the mid 90s, I think you probably like became less useful or less valuable to employers and etc. You know, like I remember when I was a lot younger and I was just starting off working, and you get into roles and people were still couldn't even type properly, and all the generators couldn't even type properly. They couldn't use Excel. They couldn't. Their productivity was just so much lower than someone who could do all these things, right? And to
Yeah.
me, this is exactly what's happening here. It's just happening faster than it has happened in the past, way faster. So if you embrace these tools and technologies that are coming out and the new way of doing things, I think you're going to become more valuable to anyone. Like you are just your productivity, your skills that you can perform, they're just multiplying exponentially. What you can do. Like I can confidently say that you can probably do 5 times more in the data space than you could before using these tools.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? You can learn Python and SQL and R and any automation tool or app tool. You can learn these things in like a week if you really apply yourself. Like that's how empowering some of these tools are. So yeah, look, my answer to that is if you embrace these, I don't think you've got anything to worry about. If you don't, and you try and continue to work the old way, I think you're going to be in trouble very, very soon. I really do.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I teach an accounting class, and one of my students was asking me about this and how it's going to change things. And I told him, like, imagine, you join an accounting firm and you refuse to use Excel, then you're probably not going to last there much longer. I think
Mm,
pretty soon it's going to be very similar, where if you kind of just ignore these tools and don't use them, that's going to happen. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I think when you're in sort of an employment market where there's a free exchange of supply and demand of labor, I think it's up to you to kind of make sure that your labor is better than everyone else's, and
mm,
it's fully fair to kind of use these technologies and tools to kind of get you ahead. And
yeah,
I also like what you said, where this enables people who don't know these data technologies to get into data. I mean,
yeah,
like the people who can now do those data things has, like you said, grown so much just because of these tools, which I mean, in my opinion, helps all of us, right?
mm.
So yeah, I definitely agree with all those things. Yeah.
Like think about, I just think about, and this is why I also don't think that many jobs are going anywhere. Just think about how much data is not being analyzed right now. Like
Yeah.
it is far in excess of how much is being analyzed. I can almost guarantee it. There's so much more that every person, that every business can analyze in their life, and in their workplace. There's so much more than you can do. Sometimes it just takes creativity to actually know what's possible. And if these AIs can empower that and then go and do it for you, I mean, that's just going to create so many advantages, improvements, gains. I just think it's super positive and super exciting for those who really embrace it. One thing that I think is, to me, the biggest ethical issue, in my mind personally, but just generally,
Hmm.
is that these LLMs have been trained on everyone's the intelligence and creativity of the entire planet, right? Like everyone individually, they've trained themselves on outputs of other people, of other humans, right?
Yeah.
And all of that value seems to be going to like a few firms, right?
Yeah.
And there's basically zero attribution to where these things were trained from. Like what, for example, if yeah, and this probably did happen, but it's impossible to know. What if ChatGPT had some training on Power BI via Enterprise DNA's forum or from our blog or from our YouTube videos, right? So, for example, say it did, right?
Yeah.
And now when I use it, it gives the most perfect answers to like every single thing you ask it about Power BI, like how to do this, how to do that. It basically just tells you how to do everything,
Yeah.
a full-time assistant. Where's the attribution? Like, where's the attribution to those who provided those insights, those frameworks, those ideas? It didn't come up with them by itself. Um, and so that to me is the biggest ethical issue. Is like all the money at the moment is going to Microsoft. It's going to Google. It's going to go to all of the big players. It just seem to be extracting all of the
Yeah.
value. And it's even worse in sort of creative fields. I feel like like for artists and designers and things like that. There's no stopping it, but that to me is the biggest ethical issue, is like, where's the attribution? Where's why is all the value getting placed into the hands of a few companies here without any pushback? So I just think that's going to there's going to be something that leads up to. I just can't see that going on without any pushback.
Yeah, I definitely see some sort of regulation around it, or maybe there's. Yeah, that's very interesting. I think a good thought experiment is, to your example, let's say if, I saw one of your blogs on how to do a Power BI thing, and then I used that and I basically did that on one of my consulting projects. I wouldn't really attribute that to you. And using something like ChatGPT just makes that kind of pathway more efficient. That's what's really changing here.
Yeah.
Because you've kind of published to the public domain, it's free. Well, I mean, I don't know if that legally it's free for anyone to use kind of for their own commercial purposes. But that's where the ethical, I guess, implication kind of lies. Because in that case, I definitely wouldn't like attribute every single, blog or every single Stack Overflow article that I read. But no, that's interesting. I think for artists, though, it is a lot harder because, like, there are clearly, I've seen cases where there are clearly styles of art that have been copied from people. Like, I just remember seeing one for, like Wes Anderson movies, and you can actually do this in the form of a Wes Anderson movie, and it kind of shows that to you. And he has a particular type of art that he does that, to be honest, he doesn't own, but clearly you can use that in Midjourney, and how much do you attribute that to other people then? So, keeping art in mind, that is something where I'm sure we'll see a lot of regulation, a lot of things like that on it.
Yeah, it's an absolute minefield, isn't it? It's so tough because it's true. It's like everyone's getting ideas off everyone else and then forming them into their own ideas. So yes, if we had some best practices and a particular framework we created around Power BI, do we truly own that? No, we don't. And I'm very happy to say that. But the internet economy is built around, like, these LLMs can just suck up all of the traffic, all of the, like, you can see a future where, does anyone even need to Google anything or go to anyone's website? Like, they can just like go into these bots and get the answer, right? And so that just to me, that destroys an entire economy, destroys an entire ecosystem. And you've got to think that these bigger players are conscious of that, right? Because if they just suck it all up, all of the value, then that's going to displace a lot of people very very quick, very, very quickly. You can already kind of see it, right? Like, you'd think that Stack Overflow must be quivering. Like,
oh yeah,
why would you ever go there? Why? So, and I bet you that these things were trained on all of Stack Overflow's data. Like, that's the depository of like all of this code that it learned how to do a lot of this stuff, right? Like, so anyway, I honestly don't have an answer. I'm just saying that that's my biggest ethical regulatory thing that I think about and wonder how that's going to play out, because it's big. It's a big change.
Yeah, no, definitely. I wonder how, there's the other ethical implication of like how this will be used by nefarious actors to kind of,
oh yeah,
do things that are not so kosher, if it can, so those types of things I'm sure will be in there too.
Oh, I mean, that's one of the biggest things I'm worried about, actually. I'm so worried about that. I just think scams are going to go through the roof here. Like, it's just, scams on websites, scams via emails, scams via calls. You've just got the ability now of anyone globally to just get perfect English, to get perfect writing skills, to do perfect manipulation from these AIs, right? Like, it worries me. It really worries me that you've given a lot of power to pretty bad actors.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's pretty funny because you can't, right now there are a few models that do this, but they don't do this well. You can't tell the difference between text generated from an LLM versus just text,
Yeah.
regularly generated by a human being. I saw this
Mm.
story of a few weeks back where there was a professor who kind of, knew that his students were cheating, so he would ask ChatGPT, "Is this written by you?" And obviously,
Mm.
ChatGPT, it's not based, it doesn't work like that, right? So it said
Mm.
yes, no, and then kind of failed the students that said yes when it's just there's not a good way to currently do that, which is
No.
I think the scary part. Like, how can you not know if an image is real or fake? How can you not know if text like who it's actually written by? Like that is to me is extremely scary, because that can have many implications too. Yeah.
Yeah, and like yeah, it is like when I have seen how like these LLMs, you can like literally prompt it to write you the most amazing email, like, and it will do it for you in like 10 seconds. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just so when you think about how accessible people are anywhere around the world to anyone else, to be scared, I'm seeing it so much now, even now, like, just on 60 Minutes reports and news reports, like the amount of people being scammed in certain locations around the world is just phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal, and in so many crazy ways as well.
Yeah.
Like, actually, I think my father told me a story. He told me a story of a he had an interaction with a sort of a VC fund, right? They were in contact with an investment they were going to make somewhere in the US, and somehow these scammers got, like, this is just one crazy story. Somehow these scammers got in between the email communication. They broke into this business's email systems and got in between the communication between the VC representative and the business,
Yeah.
like the CEO, right? And then for somehow, I don't know how this wasn't picked up, but somehow it was able to act as the CEO of this company and extract like $2 million investment from this VC. And the money was sent, and it just was sent in some random bank account of the scammer. No way to get that back, but was able to fully look and feel like the CEO of this company, right?
Yeah.
And that has just been made 10 times easier than it was before, you know. Even someone who's not even that savvy could truly do that, could truly do that communication quite well. So it's scary, man. Really, really scary. That sort of stuff, and I fear that that's about to go through the roof. Absolutely go through the roof.
I mean, I'm sure LLMs are only a few steps away from kind of replicating your voice and tone and the way you
Yeah,
speak to the point where, your wife or your kids or your family members may not even be able to kind of see the difference between what you're doing and
yeah,
an LLM is producing, which is crazy. Which is well, then
yeah.
if they can do that, then scammers can do that too to impersonate anyone they want.
Yeah, even like I would say, like even in my own email box, even on my like WhatsApp and my text message, the amount of like I would get one scammy thing a day, and
Yeah.
through if I was to add up all those channels. I mean, yeah, you just delete it, but like these players will find a way through. Yeah, they do. It's super concerning, but what can you do? This is the internet brought on a lot of issues as well. The internet connected us all so much that these scams are now possible, but this is sort of just taking it to another level, and just got to be super mindful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. Cool.
We're getting close to the end. Let's just round off. I think we've had a really good discussion, a really good chat here. Really talked about some pretty key points. What else are you saying? What else are you excited about out there? Like what are some of the other huge and big changes you see coming? Excited that are really positive for the data professional.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. So I think um, when I think a lot of companies have already kind of seen this. Companies are really embracing this as well, and actually now, spinning up their own LLMs for their own sort of platforms, their own
Mm,
sort of content, their own sort of the ways of doing things. Where to the point where there are some companies piloting with during their orientation for new employees, to do the regular stuff that they usually do, but then also introduce this bot that they can chat with on their computer that's basically like a desktop icon. So
Yeah.
I think that is a great first step for companies to kind of use LLMs internally for their own use cases that get me very excited. I think just again, like pairing LLMs with any of those sort of agents or technologies, even things like no code, right?
Mm.
Like the whole point of no code, right, was to be able to bridge business users and developers, because business users actually are the ones who use the application, or if there are no code applications or no code automations who are going to use it. But there's always things lost in a game of telephone when you then describe those requirements to the people who actually build it.
Mm.
That's why no code came into play to kind of solve that, to bridge the gap. Now, AI, this amazing version of no code where it's not even doing drag and drop anymore, it's literally just using the English language, that
Mm.
revolutionizes that bridge as well, which is to me very exciting because I'm obviously very active in this, no code space.
Yeah.
So I think those are the types of things that kind of get me excited, that just people will be able to do more things themselves.
Yeah. What is low code even anymore? Because like I just is it even a thing anymore? Because I mean everything's low code now. Like even something that like is sort of more historically was like more high code. I mean, you can just literally just ask and get all the code for what you need. I've seen it many times. Like, I've seen on YouTube, I've seen people develop apps in like a weekend, and that may have taken them months before, that you can just literally just generate code like it's nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could go into ChatGPT on a weekend with Python, build like this whole Teams application that we're using right now too. Like it's
Yeah.
uh it's 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 pretty wild. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I personally want to get into a little bit more, just to get a feel for it, is that like I think open source is quite scary to a lot of like to pretty much the vast majority of us,
Mhm.
mainly because you've got to understand so much like code, and you've got to understand so much technical stuff, right? But if you can take an open source project, but then you can use AI to help pivot it and to help fork it into something else, that to me democratizes open source like a significant amount. And so I'm keen myself to explore that a lot more, like something that I've never really gotten into, because for every product that we use, there's actually an equivalent open source that you can basically build for free, like build and use for free, that you can go and customize, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely.
I even saw that there's like a I haven't seen a Power BI equivalent just yet, but like a Tableau equivalent, basically, like that you can basically use for free in open source, and you can customize, you can build on top of it. So imagine, being able to do that across all these different apps, right? All these different, like for any app that you could possibly want to build, there's some sort of template, there's some sort of open source framework that you can just dive into and build upon. And because you don't really need to know like how to code in a lot of respects, it's just really the architecting that you need to understand, because the code can be generated for you, in a lot of cases, just out of nothing, out of thin air.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. It's all about the imagination. It's all about like what you think you can do with LLMs and like how to actually
Mm.
ask it properly. I think even
Mm.
with open source, one of the big challenges that people have had is they can't use things like Git properly, or that kind of
Yeah,
scares, right? To
yeah,
even to be able to clone a repository or even know what that means, that kind of that uh, gets some people nervous and they kind of stops them from going further. With this,
yeah,
it's going to be very simple for them to kind of use and again take any sort of open source project and go ahead with that. So yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, like I agree. I like GitHub is scary. It's scary to most people. Like I mean I haven't used it extensively myself, but I think like I truly believe that's the journey that enterprise DNA is on, is empowering, all of these new things. It's got to be, right. Like everything
Yeah.
is being democratized. So much more is possible for the everyday individual. And so, from an enterprise DNA's perspective, we've got to empower all this. We've got to really, really get that creativity flowing. Really, get everyone excited about what they can really do. And so, because I'm excited, I think you are of a similar way, and it's about just getting everyone else excited. Like, it's not just a bit of analytics you can do now. You can do data science, you can do app development, you can do open source, you can do workflow automation. I mean, you can be an omni data and AI expert now, and that's what we've got to try and push. Get everyone aware.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's our role, just to show everyone the capabilities of what it can do, and to get everyone excited. I think the best way to get everyone excited is to show them.
Yeah,
I'm glad that there's so many things like on the website, or even across the web, blogs, videos, things like that, what they can do. You can just simply type in ChatGPT, can it do this? And I'm sure there'll be a few videos showing and proving that it can do this, or that we'll be able to do this soon. So that's great.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff, Henry. Let's really good chat. Really good chat. Let's round it off. Appreciate you being on, and thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for joining the Analytic Mind podcast. And yeah, hopefully we got you excited and got you thinking about a lot of things that are happening right now and that are coming soon. Thanks, Henry. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. It's great to be connected, and I hope you are enjoying the content we're creating through the Analytic Mind podcast. If you enjoyed this session, make sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified for each episode as we release them. If you want to learn more about Enterprise DNA and the many initiatives we're working on, check out www.enterprisedna.co. There we have a range of resources to download, events to attend, and information to explore. We're leading the charge around this new paradigm we're living in, where tools like Power BI can literally change how an organization manages, analyzes, and distributes insights that can make an impact. It's an exciting moment in the analytics space. So glad that you're on this journey with us. Take care.